Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Harrison Bard, CEO and co-founder of Custom Cones USA and Day Savers. Thank you very much for joining me today, Harrison.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Harrison, it's been a bit since we talked last. You know, when we were last time you were on the podcast, we talked about the next big thing in pre-rolls. And you suggested that it was going to be freshness and humidors. Do you still feel the same? Freshness and humidors, are they the future of pre-rolls?
Yeah, right now in certain markets like Michigan, it's a race to the bottom and people are creating cheaper and cheaper pre-rolls. But eventually as these markets mature, prices get to stabilize, and then it comes down to product quality. And if you're a value customer, you're still going to be searching for a really cheap, affordable option. But your more regular consumers that want something a little bit more premium are going to then gravitate to what's actually fresh and high quality. And that's going to be the big way companies could differentiate themselves.
And, you know, I forgot to ask, sorry to be impolite, how you been?
I've been great. Yeah, things are super busy, coming out with a lot of new products. Yeah, and exciting things for Day Savers, our consumer brand.
Okay, what are some of the exciting new things for Day Savers?
Yeah, so we're officially in sale, for sale online and in store at Urban Outfitters. We have two SKUs, the 10-pack of artisan tubes, which is the same size and shape as a cigarette, but it has our spiral paper tip and it's made with ultrafine rolling paper instead of cigarette paper, and then our perfect pack filling machine. So you can pick those up online at daysavers.com, or now if you happen to roll past our Urban Outfitters, you can get it there.
How did the deal with Urban Outfitters come together?
So Urban Outfitters recently expanded into smoking accessories, and they have like an online smoke shop and also in certain stores. And so they reached out to us. I'm not sure exactly how they learned of our brand, but maybe at a trade show, but they liked what they saw and they took a chance with us. And I checked in with them the other day and they said they've been selling extremely well.
Oh, well, that's encouraging. I mean, it's always nice when those kind of opportunities seem to just kind of fall into your lap, you know?
Yeah, so that was pretty exciting.
You talked about markets that are racing to the bottom. Do you sort of just kind of wait and see when that sort of market fluctuation happens, or how do you participate in a market that's racing to the bottom?
Yeah, so for us on the supply side, it doesn't really matter as much, but we do notice customers in those states tend to get really price conscious. And then that's where they'll stop ordering custom branded items and shift towards stock, because every penny counts. And so states like Michigan and California, where there's an insane amount of price compression, they have to cut costs by any means necessary. So we'll see customers stop ordering custom branded items and switch to totally plain, or we have designer cone options, which are pre-branded either with just different colors or indica hybrid sativa. So they'll make the switch to something like that to save on cost.
Where does the industry still need help when it comes to pre-roll production?
The big thing is in the closing and finishing. So there's a couple solutions out there. That's the most labor-intensive part. Is you've filled the pre-rolls with flour. You're assuming they're the right weight, and then you need to either fold the tops or twist them shut, and that is really the slowest part. So a lot of people assume that if you have a bigger pre-roll machine with more holes, and therefore it's filling more cones at the same time, that's the end all be all, and that's going to be the fastest pre-roll machine. But really, you could have a smaller machine with a special attachment or tool to fold the tops, and you're going to get more efficiency and throughput through that. So we actually ran an experiment and compared the fill and fold, the king cone, and the knockbox versus each other with both 1 and 2 operators. And the fill and fold has a special tool where you can go 1 row at a time and tamp down the flour, fold over the paper, and then make it flush at the top. Yeah. And even though that machine only has 121 holes versus the king cone has 169, the fill and fold is way faster in terms of you produce more pre-rolls per hour. So with 1 operator, the fill and fold did 837 pre-rolls per hour, whereas the king cone did 585. And then the knockbox came in last. It has only 100 holes, and it did 529 pre-rolls per hour.
Okay. With those certain products, Is there a lot of brand loyalty? Are people more inclined to use the knockbox just because that's what they've known throughout their entire tenure in the industry?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, we have a really big client up here, actually one of the biggest brands in Washington. And we don't manufacture any of these machines. We manufacture all the paper products, all the cones and blunts. We directly manufacture those in our factory. But all of the machines we just source and find the best machines out there, and then just educate our customers and give them the option to buy what's best for their business. And so we're really confident in the fill and fold because it has that folding attachment. And we were really trying to educate and get this company to switch to that because it was going to be better for their manufacturing process. And we convinced the owners, who you would think would be the decision makers, but ultimately the production team did not want to make the switch. They're like, we're so familiar with the knockbox. A couple of people on the team didn't like it. And really, it just comes down to a learning curve. Had they invested the time and tried it for a couple days and a few runs, they would have figured it out and made it work for them. But some people on the production line are so used to and familiar with the knockbox that they'll never switch. It's by far the most common machine. So if you have a lot of employee turnover and you have new people coming in all the time, it's really safe to assume that they're going to have experience with the knockbox. And that's also a reason that you might be like, let's just stick with that because we do have a lot of turnover and it makes training, way less time intensive.
Are there still issues with product consistency and uniformity?
Yeah, definitely. It depends if you're buying from a reputable manufacturer or not. The size of the cones are really precise, and it comes down to the millimeter. In fact, like 1 decimal point out, 1/10 of a millimeter. And if they're not the right size, they won't fit in certain pre-roll machines. They won't fit in your packaging, or you'll see variance between pre-rolls. And if you have a multi-pack and they're not all the same height, brands really hate that. It doesn't look very good. So, just 1 millimeter off as the cone tapers has a big effect towards the top of the cone and how much volume you're able to fill. And that's also important in terms of like closing the pre-roll at the end, in terms of a twist or a fold. If you have too much paper at the top, you're going to have too much of a twist or way too much crumpled paper during that folding process. And it's not going to look good or spark very well when you light it up.
Are pre-roll manufacturers getting smarter about, best practices, trying to limit this type of waste and, things that brands really don't want on their products?
Yeah, definitely. The companies that have been in the industry for a long time are really dialing in their processes. Companies like Jeter that are expanding into different states really have to have their SOPs and their supply chain in place. And you see that they're not over expanding. They have certain core SKUs and they really make sure that they have everything dialed in on those SKUs and they're able to replicate and create millions of joints that are exactly the same, super consistent, and are pleasing customers all over the country.
I've heard more and more that people expect pre-rolls to eventually be the biggest product category in all of cannabis, just out of the sheer convenience factor. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's either going to be pre-rolls or vapes. It really comes down to consumer preference and potential health impacts. So smoking anything isn't healthy. Neither is vaping. You can see that in the tobacco industry. People thought that vaping, like nicotine vapes, was going to be healthier than smoking cigarettes. And right now, there's not definitive evidence to say that vaping is healthier. Still causes issues with like blood pressure and other sort of lung things as you're inhaling those vapors and those humectants and other chemicals. So I personally don't like vapes. I immediately feel the burn in the back of the throat. There's a lot of botanical terpenes, which if you look at the warning label on those botanical terpenes, they're incredibly hazardous and require a lot of care when dealing with them in their natural form. And there's a ton of reports of different heavy metals in those vape products and the vape pens, ton of waste concerns in terms of the single-use batteries. But the number one category in the future will definitely be pre-rolls and vapes. Which one's number one, might depend on the state and the demographic, and then potential long-term health implications. So we're also doing this study with the Cannabis Research Coalition and the Network of Applied Pharmacognosy called the Science of Smokability. And this is the first and only study that's actually looking at the science of the constituents of the smoke. So we're taking pre-rolls, we're smoking them through a scientific smoking machine that comes from the tobacco industry, which allows you to take a joint or cigarette and smoke it repeatably, which is important for science. So it has a puff profile in terms of how long is the puff, how much pressure, and then over what timeline and how many puffs over that timeline. And it's smoking it consistently. It's measuring the temperature of the smoke as it's going into your mouth. And then you're able to capture the smoke and send off that to a lab and see what's in there. And so some of the things we're looking at is how much THC or cannabinoids are passed through. So potentially you could look at what type of infused pre-rolls are actually effective. You might have an infused pre-roll where all the cannabis is just getting blown off in the side stream, which is the smoke that comes off the lid end, or potentially it's burning way too hot and therefore doesn't actually make it into the user's lungs and get absorbed. And then you're also able to see the burn temperature. So like how enjoyable is that smoke? And then from a health perspective, there's these things called nitromycins, which is one of the cancer-causing components of tobacco. And so we're seeing what levels are these in cannabis, if at all, and potentially what nutrients are contributing to that. So there's a ton of different nutrients used to help grow cannabis faster and be more potent, but no one's ever really cared what impact does this have on the end consumer. So potentially through research like this, customers will have more confidence of what is the least harmful consumption method between smoking joints, different types of joints, different infusion methods, as well as different vape products, types of concentrates and stuff like that.
How did you become involved with the study?
We love science and education, so we became linked in with the network of applied pharmacognosy and the Cannabis Research Coalition. We're just always reading information and trying to educate ourselves. And when we learned of this study, it was something that we have dreamed of for a long time. So myself and my co-founder Frederick, we learned a lot from the tobacco industry when we first started. We had to learn a lot about paper science, and the tobacco industry knows more than anyone else in terms of rolling paper and smoking science. So we learned of a smoking machine years ago, and we thought that was just the coolest thing. And we always wanted to buy one. We still have plans to buy one. But when we learned that someone, was using one and doing this type of study, we were like, we have to be involved. So we partnered with them on it. We're commissioning custom studies, one of which is that infused pre-roll study. So we're actually going to be able to figure out what type of infusion method is best. And then we're getting the community involved as well. We're picking 200 random participants and paying them $4.20 to smoke 2 pre-rolls and have them give us feedback on what they feel is a better or worse smoke, because we have the smoking machine, which is going to give us quantitative data, but then we want real people to smoke them as well to give us that qualitative data. And they're specifically going to be looking at 2 different pre-rolls that are treated with 2 different nutrients or flushed to different degrees. And no one really knows what type of nutrients or to what degree that's going to impact, all these different smoking characteristics.
Have you had any participants yet? Like, have you started receiving any sort of feedback? Any notes on the early data?
Nothing that we could release yet, but phase 1 has been conducted, but we're still analyzing the results. And phase 1 is looking at moisture content. So we did the smoking machine experiments as well as real people, and they smoked 2 or potentially 3 different joints, looking at the different moisture levels in the cannabis. And they were measuring it qualitatively. So what did they think the difference was in terms of harshness, ranking that on a scale? And we also had them look at the ash color, because there's a lot of conjecture that different ash color means it's better or worse. In terms of a whiter ash always means it's better. There's different tricks companies could play. In the tobacco industry, they put calcium carbonate, which is essentially chalk, into the paper. And that doesn't burn, it just sits there. So it just stays in the ash and makes it look white. And there's potentially tricks that cannabis companies are doing as well, where you can't just believe the color means better. And we're looking, I'm not sure exactly when the phase 1 findings are going to be published, but probably over the next couple of weeks to a month, we'll be releasing that. So stay tuned.
Are cannabis companies using similar tricks like the calcium carbonate?
I can't say for sure. You could definitely buy rolling paper that has that in it. None of the rolling papers that we sell have calcium carbonate in it, but you could go to any of the big rolling paper companies. That's one of the burn additives that may be in there. There's also, I think they put citric acid in there as a burn additive. There's a couple other chemicals or things that you could do to change the burn properties of a rolling paper or cigarette paper. But I could assure you that none of our rolling papers have calcium carbonate, but it's very well possible that another company is sourcing that type of paper, getting it rolled into cones at some other factory, and is using that to make it seem like their papers or their flower, is burning into that white ash, which a lot of people deem super, super desirable.
Do you think the cannabis consumer would be more sensitive to those tactics than your average tobacco consumer?
I mean, if they found out, they would definitely feel deceived. But I feel like your average consumer isn't that educated yet. You often hear a big complaint in the industry, especially amongst bud tenders, that people come in just asking for the highest potency product. But what really matters is how fresh the product is, what's the terpene content, how is it grown. So there's probably very few people in the industry that even are aware that there's these type of tricks. And there's probably, most people don't even know that white ash is better. If you're really involved in the industry, you've probably heard that. But I don't think it's something that's super widespread amongst like the average consumer.
Okay. Any trouble finding participants for that study?
No, surprisingly, it was really easy. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have the
How
exact numbers off my head, but I think we had close to 10,000 people sign up and we're only
okay.
picking 200. So we're trying to figure out other ways to involve the other participants in the study. There'll be future phases. So can't rule out that we won't do something again in the future. And then we're going to just send out a survey as well to get other sort of metrics, different smoking preferences, so we could give like a full holistic view of like what do people like to smoke, why do they like to smoke it, what age and demographic are they, and do those affect their smoking preferences. So we'll have a lot of cool data to share.
I mean, it's kind of nice when market research can also double as publicity.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. Well, we are definitely science focused. If you look at our blog and our video, we're all about science and education. But by getting 200 random participants, it did drum up a lot of interest. So two
Yeah.
birds with one stone. Yeah.
You said that you were pitting different infusion methods against one another. What infusion methods are you looking at specifically?
Yeah, so the most common one is when you paint the outside of the joint, typically with distillate, and then coat it in keef. So we're definitely comparing that since it's the most popular. Then there's an internal infusion method, and we have a special machine that will perfectly homogenize any two materials together. So you could take really thick, viscous distillate or any other type of concentrate, even hash rosin, ground flour, and using centrifugal force in a planetary motion. So it's not like a centrifuge would spin things out and separate. So this is two motions going at once, which smashes things together and perfectly homogenizes the concentrate into ground flour. So we're going to test that. My hypothesis is that's going to perform better than when it's painted on the outside. And then we're going to look at where they put a rod of oil down the center. So that's really common in hash holes. And then there's other automated machines that will inject a rod of oil down the center of a pre-roll. And that's also probably going to be better than when you paint it on the outside, because when you put it on the outside, you're directly combusting it. Oftentimes you'll notice a thick black plume of smoke come off the end. But if you're able to inject the oil down the center or infuse the flower in the inside of the joint, the ember, which is the hottest part of the pre-roll, the cherry people refer to it as, is gently vaporizing and heating up all the flower behind that. So instead of directly combusting it, it is going to directly combust a little bit on that end, but then as it goes, it should be vaporizing the rest of the oil or more of the oil instead of, directly lighting it on fire.
When it comes to an infused pre-roll, do you have a personal preference?
Yeah, my preference is that it's infused in the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always opt for those. And if it's hash rosin infused, that's going to be the highest quality, the best flavor, the cleanest, solventless. So any sort of hash rosin infused pre-roll, and those are never painted on the outside. So those are always my preference.
In March, you offered the ultimate stoner dream job. Did you hire anybody?
We're getting really close. We
Yeah.
had over 35,000 people apply. Out of those 35,000 people, we sent a secondary survey to gauge how interested they were. So not all of the 35,000 people that thought they were interested actually ended up finalizing their application. And then we've been spending months, vetting people, going through the Zoom interviews. And so we're pretty close. It's been a really exciting process. At first, we were open to all sorts of content creators, writers, social media strategists, creative directors, graphic designers. And as we've gone through the process, we've been honing in on who exactly is going to be best fit for us. And right now we're leaning towards someone that's definitely a content creator. There's a strong emphasis on video content. And our plans is for Day Savers is to really make a lot of really engaging entertainment content. So we're looking for someone that could be in our office, making in-office content, going around behind the scenes, as well as doing parodies and comedies and different types of skits, all the way up to long form content that could be like a mini reality TV show.
Okay. What was the job description of the ultimate stoner dream job?
It was get paid to smoke weed and be creative. And you could have been creative in all those different ways in terms of writing or video, being you're the person behind the camera or you're the person in front of the camera. And depending on who was the most qualified, we were going to look at what we thought would be the best fit for us. And as we've gone through, we found a lot of talented content creators, YouTubers, people that make entertainment content, and that's stood out and as going to be what's going to be the best fit for us.
With 35,000 applicants, did that exceed your expectations in terms of what you thought you might get?
Oh yeah, I mean, did not know it would go that well. We thought we would maybe get a couple thousand, but we got really great coverage by Forbes, and then it was picked up by Now This, and a ton of pretty much like every industry publication shared it. So really a lot of excitement across the entire industry and went way, way better than we expected.
I knew it was a hit when we had people reaching out to us directly on LinkedIn and through our website trying to apply. And we're like, no, read the entire post. You have to go to Custom Cones USA.
People were so excited. They weren't reading the entire post. Pretty much every publication that shared it had the same issue where people were reaching out to them saying, where can I apply? All of our partners that also helped share it. People were reaching out to them. But I mean, it helped a lot of our partners who shared it on social media because they got a big surge of followers. So it was a win-win for everyone.
So any ideas cooking for the next potential similar position available at Custom Cones USA or Day Savers?
In terms of like a dream job campaign, I don't think we're going to do that again. It might be something we do annually. It could be cool to bring in someone new each year, give the opportunity to someone else. But we're really excited to finally nail down the person for this position. It's been months in the making, and really dig deep with them, start making really engaging entertainment content. And our goal is to really grow our YouTube channel and spread the awareness of our new brand, Day Savers.
So do the applicants know that they're on the short list, or are they still, is everyone still like that has submitted an application kind of, do they not know yet?
I would say most people don't know.
Okay.
I have been doing a lot of Zoom interviews, so those people that did get that step know, but the people that didn't get picked for a Zoom interview don't know yet. But I will be working with the team on sending out that messaging pretty soon. Just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anyone.
Okay. Well, and for those marketing materials, it's you in the marketing materials, right?
Sometimes, but I don't have enough time to be in all of it. But as a founder of a small startup company, you have to do anything and everything. So I'm always happy to jump into the videos. It's a lot of fun. It's more fun than some of the other stuff I have to do, but it's not very sustainable. So I won't be in all the videos going forward.
With the growth that you've experienced over the last year, do you feel like you're still in startup mode?
Yeah. Especially now that we started Day Savers. It's brand new. The amount of business in terms of orders and revenue that we do to Custom Cones USA is minuscule. And then even beyond that, I come from Amazon, and they have this philosophy of day one, and that it's always day one. And as soon as you move away from that thinking and get to a point of like being too comfortable and too pompous that you're bigger than everyone else and you don't have to be constantly looking to innovate and improve things, that's when you start to fail. So I learned that from Amazon, having the day one mentality, as well as being really customer centric and always trying to deliver for the customer. But especially now that Day Savers is brand new, it does feel like we're a small startup, and we definitely still have that mentality.
Is the day one mentality tied to like remaining hungry and, kind of trying to fight for your spot in the market like you would a startup?
Yeah. Staying hungry, staying lean. A lot of companies will just start spending needlessly expanding into too many different areas and just throwing money to try to solve every problem. And just being comfortable and not, checking up on your competition, stop innovating. That's where you see these, big giant companies fail. Like you hear case studies about Kodak. You feel so entrenched that you're the dominant force in the industry, and you even learn about things like digital cameras, and you're like, that's not important, and then you're irrelevant, 10
Mm-hmm.
years later.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel you stack up against your competitors right now on both the Day Saver side and Custom Cones USA side?
Yeah, so on Custom Cones USA, we are by far the most trusted pre-roll supplier, and we also have the widest variety of products and the deepest expertise. So we set the standards in terms of compliance testing. Since we have customers in every state, in Canada, and other countries across the world, we take the strictest measurement for heavy metals, pesticides, and microbials, and just stack them on top of each other. So we make sure no matter where we're shipping the product, it's going to be compliant. No other company is doing that. And we also ensure all of our testing is done here in the US. Other overseas suppliers will get their testing done locally overseas, and it's not nearly as credible or trustworthy as it would be here in the US. Then in terms of product variety and expertise, we only focus on pre-rolls. So there's other big cannabis packaging companies, and they're like a Walmart. Like you wouldn't go to Walmart and ask them how to fix your deck or like buy power tools. But if you go to Home Depot, where they only specialize in those things, they have people that know how to use all the tools, have, built stuff in their own backyard and can give you that product expertise, and maybe like Ace Hardware is even better example where they focus in on that help for the customer and that product knowledge. So when customers reach out to us, we're not just selling them a product. Our customer service team is really educated, but then our sales team is super knowledgeable in terms of the paper types, the science behind it, all the different sizes of the cones. And then we're able to help troubleshoot manufacturing issues. So companies will tell us, I'm having this issue in terms of the pre-rolls not smoking well, or I can't fit a half a gram into this size cone. And immediately our sales team could help troubleshoot that. It could be a variety of issues in terms of they're not using the right size cone, the moisture content could be too high or too low, they're not using a sifter, the particle size isn't right. So we're not just a transactional packaging company, we're really a supply chain partner, and no other company provides that level of knowledge and expertise.
Do you find yourself being more of a consultative partner with mom and pops or larger MSOs, or is it sometimes a mix?
Oh, it's definitely a mix. The
Good.
reason that mom and pops love working with us is we have the widest variety of products and it's in stock here. So there's no lead times. And with things like our designer cones, we make it really easy to set your product apart. So we have color tip cones where they're just a plain color, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black, and pink. And you could choose the color that fits with your brand, or you could create multi-packs with those different colors. We have different holiday themed cones like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah. We have an American flag cone, which could work for a variety of holidays, as well as a rainbow flag tip cone for Pride. No other company has these, and that makes it really easy for a small mom and pop business to get going. And there's no minimums. They could just buy one box, it's in stock, we ship it same day. Plus, our team is willing and excited to help educate them and train them. So oftentimes these people are just starting their business. They don't come from a manufacturing background, but they're true cannabis entrepreneurs and they know and they love the plant, but they need help with manufacturing and getting SOPs made and understanding, what are the different sizes and what are the popular items. So we'll often get on calls with companies and we'll educate them on the trends in their state. So we have a headset subscription. We could hop on there and let's say they're in Michigan, we could tell them the top 20 companies that are there. What SKUs are they selling the most of? What sizes? What if it's infused or non-infused? What pack sizes? And we give them that knowledge to help set them up. And they're either going to copy those exact SKUs or look for a gap in the market and be like, oh, okay, no one's making a 7-pack of half grams. That's going to be my entry in. Or they see, Jeter and Stizzy, they're making 5-packs, half gram infused. I'm going to go in and make that one, but I'm going to be more premium because my flower is more craft. And then on the LP and MSO side, they really need to trust that your product's high quality in terms of the testing and compliance. and as well as the measurements on the cone. So they're most often using automated machines, and those are very finicky. So if the size is off, that machine's going to be down potentially for the entire day if they don't fit, or it's going to have constant issues where they're going to have to fix it, take cones out. It's not going to be operating at 100% efficiency. So they really trust us for that. And then we also have special programs for MSOs and LPs where we could do open POs to help them get lower volume pricing. We're able to stock some of their custom branded cones in our warehouse here in the US, help them with demand and supply forecasting. So since we're so focused in on pre-rolls, we're really able to help everyone out from really small companies up to the biggest in the world.
Would you recommend a headset subscription for any operator in cannabis?
It's really expensive. So not for any operator. If you're an MSO, it could definitely be worth it, but it is really, really expensive. So if you're a small mom and pop business, I would just recommend you become a customer of ours, and our sales team would be more than happy to schedule a call and give you all the information you want. Headset does publish really great reports on their website too for free, but it's too expensive to be for everyone.
Okay. How much is it?
It depends on what you get. So you could pay for just certain categories of data, so only pre-roll data, or you could pay for every category, flower, concentrates, pre-rolls, topicals. And then you could pay more or less depending on how many states you want and if you want Canadian data. But I think if you get everything, it's close to maybe $50,000 a year or something. So it's like a whole new person on your marketing or your data insights team worth of money.
How often are you looking at these consumer trends and you find yourself surprised?
There hasn't been too many interesting trends this year. I think the market's in a bit of the one interesting was that Michigan is blowing up and doing more pre-rolls than California.
Right.
But our insight from that is that they are neighboring a bunch of states where it's still illegal. And we saw that in Colorado too. So Colorado's sales were booming. And then once all the states around them legalized, sales plummeted. And so we're seeing that same thing play out in Michigan. If you're an operator in Michigan, especially if you're near the border, don't be fooled thinking this type of demand is going to last forever. It's not. Once those states start legalizing, they're going to have their own dispensaries there. But we're doing our annual pre-roll white paper where we look at all the data across all the states in the industry. And there isn't that many new and exciting trends right now. The same things are holding true. Infused pre-rolls are dominating. It's just continuing to grow. In some states, if you look at the top 10 or 20 best-selling pre-rolls, almost all of them are infused, or maybe one or two aren't, but 90% are infused pre-rolls. Multi-packs are growing in popularity and becoming more and more popular. So 5 and 7 packs are dominating. And the one thing that's new is mixed strain pre-rolls. Those used to be a really small percentage of the market. That's increasing. There's a couple of reasons that could be the case. It depends on the type of company. It's really hard to be consistent. If you're not growing your own flower, which a lot of companies aren't, they'll just buy from the market. You're usually shopping for what's fresh and what's affordable, and it's hard to get the same thing every time. So they'll typically create blends. That way they don't have to worry about their stickers or their labels always saying the same strain and them not being able to get that. And then on automated pre-roll machines, you really need to have the consistency of the item dialed in. And by creating blends, you see that in the tobacco industry as well. It helps you get more uniformity, and that's going to help an automated machine roll run. So those are the two reasons that I think we're seeing mixed strain pre-rolls grow in popularity, whereas before they were not popular at all.
Well, I heard that some have speculated that blends were going to be the pretty much dominant future of pre-rolls once it's, as it continues to scale.
Yeah, I could see that being the case once, maybe there's federal legalization and there's a couple massive brands that are using this really sophisticated tobacco machinery to totally automate the process. The only way to scalably do that and keep the machines running as well as get the supply in is to create these mixed strains. Also, customers kind of get sick and tired of the same strain over and over again, but the type of customer who doesn't care, and by seeing mixed strain, that it's not going to say it's just like this is a sativa blend, and that's all they care about is that it's a sativa versus an indica. So yeah, once those machines really take hold and in order for them to take hold, you need to have interstate commerce. I could definitely see that being the case.
When it comes to the science side of the industry or the R&D side, well, more the science side, where do you see gaps? What would you like to see studied next?
Hmm, that's a good question. This Science of Smokability studies, we're going to be rolling that out for 2 years, but I'm
Mhm.
really curious about the vape side. So we're looking at the efficacy and the safety of smoking flower, but there's not nearly as much. I mean, there's nothing conducted now on that, and then there's very little on vaping as well. So curious to see if different type of vape pens are effective or, varying levels of different metrics, if different type of concentrates are vaporizing at different levels and yielding different type of constituents to the vapor. That would be really interesting. And then there's just not even that much uniformity around product testing in terms of like potency and the heavy metals, pesticides, microbials. There's not a standard yet. So these labs are potentially running different tests to get all of these same things, but they're not consistent amongst each other. And there's a chance that they're not even consistent amongst themselves as they run these day after day, week after week. You see a lot of bad press come out about shady test results and shady labs. And once that is buttoned up, it'd be good to see more research and clarity there on the standards.
Do you think so? After the industry survived VapeGate, do you feel like those consumers who went through that and continued to vape, you know, no information would change their tendencies?
That definitely had a huge impact when VapeGate happened, like in 2020. We saw vape sales plummet and pre-roll sales boom. It was figured out. It was the vitamin E acetate. People stopped using that, and I think consumers who were dissuaded, they moved back. Ultimately, vapes are incredibly convenient, and that's why people are buying them. They know it's usually a lower quality concentrate. They know that the flavor, I mean, sometimes I don't even care about flavor because there's botanical terpenes in there where it tastes like grape soda. And so they don't even care that it has a cannabis flavor. Um, but if more studies like that came out, it definitely has a big impact on the industry. So anytime people are concerned about their health, they definitely, make certain changes.
One thing I like about the day saver side of the business is that it seems like you guys have a little bit of fun with it. Some of the novelty products. Are you looking at rolling out any new sort of novelty items that might catch somebody's eye? Like what was the cross?
Yeah, so the Smoke Temple cross gun is
Yeah.
great.
Hmm.
People love the cross joint. They love seeing it in Pineapple Express, but making your own is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for your average person who can't even roll a regular joint. So we're coming out with another version of the cross gun, which we're really excited about. We are coming out with other novelty things. I don't know if I want to share it yet because coming up with new products is so slow.
Yeah.
You come up with the idea, then it takes, a couple weeks or a month to get a sample. Then we have to design the packaging, get samples of the packaging, approve that, then throw the design on it, get more samples of that, and then make the production run and then ship it via ocean. So every time we come out with a new item, it takes like maybe 6 to 9 months to actually get it. But we are working on a lot of really cool things. But you'll have to subscribe to our newsletter on Day Savers, follow us on social media, and you could be the first to know.
Very good tease there.
Okay.
Uh, were there any issues with the cross cone in terms of smokability?
So the cross cone that we have now is really big. It's 109 in length, which is like the standard 1 gram cone. But then with the two joints going on the arms, it holds about an eighth of flour in there. And so it's really heavy. So one issue about smokability is it once you start burning and it gets resinous, it starts weighing down on it. So sometimes you have to support it a little bit. And then as it burns to the center, it's hard to ensure that you lit all three arms correctly. So that's more on user error, but you need to have a friend to help light it because you don't have three hands. So you got to light all three ends at the same time. And then you're not getting like good coverage around the full circumference of the lit end of the joint. So then you have to like make sure that you're lighting it completely, otherwise it'll run. And then if one arm is lit worse than the other, it won't all converge on the center at the same time. So that is difficult. So we're working on some size tweaks to make it easier for people and mitigate that issue. But ultimately, it's a showstopper. If you bring that to a party, everyone freaks out. They love it. People are taking pictures, adding videos. It's a great conversation starter.
No, I agree. In terms of the Day Savers products that the Cannabis Equipment News team has seen, that was definitely the one where like you have that like silent pause as soon as it's unveiled. You're just like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah, and the packaging is beautiful. It's in a really thick luxury paperboard box, has a magnet closure, all black matte paper with silver foiling and like beautiful design on it. So it's a collector's piece. A lot of people save the box and will use it as like a multi-pack case or, just to store anything next to their bedside table.
Was it a priority, maybe more of a marketing priority, but to make sure you get the design right when you launch new products for the consumer side of the business?
Yeah, design's really important, and it's something that we're still evaluating as we come out with new items. But a lot of people, they buy with their eyes. They say they eat with their eyes. So like if it doesn't look good, they're not going to be drawn to it. And if you go to a smoke shop, oftentimes they have a full wall of smoking accessories. They have a lot of smoke shops pride themselves on just having everything. So they literally buy every blunt wrap, every tobacco product, every rolling paper. And it's really cool to see the full wall of all the different colors and brands. And if you don't stand out there, you lose your chance. And um, so yeah, design's really important. And a lot of the products that we design are design focused. So like we have a USA themed pre-roll pack that we donate 10% to Weed for Warriors, Cannabis Veterans Charity. We also have a rainbow tipped one that we donate to the ACLU for Pride. And so those packages have to convey what's inside and really draw those type of consumers to them.
Well, you're right. When you see that wall of products, it is vibrant. Do you see the industry maybe going back to more of a cleaner, simplistic design to stand out amongst the color spectrum?
It depends on the branding. So, like, if you look at health food items, they
Mhm.
typically go really minimalist, very plain. It could be described as boring, but that's what resonates with like a health food customer. They want to, for some reason, that like speaks to them and it conveys that there's like minimally processed and minimal ingredients. So, for that type of product, it works. But if you're trying to show someone it's flavorful, you want it to be like exploding with colors, exploding with flavor. So it definitely depends on the type of product and the type of customer you're trying to target.
As a connoisseur yourself, have there been any products that you've tried recently that, stood out among the other ones?
I will be a little self-centered, I guess, and just tell you about one of the new items that we're coming out with. So the Artisan Tube, which is that cigarette-sized shape tube, the one
Mhm.
that's in Urban Outfitters, people love that. Cones are amazing and people love cones, but a lot of people are starting to like tubes better. So those tubes smoke really well. And then we just came out with one with made out of hemp wrap. And so it's the same size and shape of a cigarette, but with a hemp wrap. So it's like a really thin mini cigarillo which doesn't really exist and it wouldn't be impossible to roll, but a lot of people are bad at rolling. So it gives you an opportunity to make a really mini cigarillo that you can fill with weed or whatever you want. And those burn really, really smooth. It's the hemp wrap, that's great. It's the size of the tube, the low diameter, and then our spiral paper filter tip that really all combine and create a really smooth, nice smoking experience.
So we're not too far away from MJ Biz. Are you going to the show this year?
Yep, of course. Yeah, we'll have two booths there, one for Custom Cones USA and one for Day Savers.
So one thing I'm always interested in, and it seems like MJ Biz exhibitors go out of their way to try and have the most eye-catching or the giveaways with the biggest draw. For you, when it comes to trade shows, what works when it comes to getting people in the booth and potential giveaways?
Yeah, so for us, we just focus on the product and our products speak for themselves. And since we have so many different types of products, it's like a kid in the candy store experience. So we have something called the Cone Bar, which is these beautiful custom built acrylic displays that have little drawers of all of our cones. And we have the designer tip ones, like I mentioned, which are all the same in terms of smoking experience, but they have different colors on it. We have the holiday ones. Then we have glass tip rolling papers in cone shape versus glass tip tubes with rolling paper versus wood tip ones in cone and tube shape with hemp wrap. We have different color hemp wraps. We have ceramic tip, cone shape, tube shape. So we have hundreds of different types of combinations and pre-roll options. And then when you see them all next to each other, it's pretty overwhelming. It's really exciting. It does feel like you're in a candy store where there's all these different types of gummies and flavors and stuff like that. And we give out hundreds and hundreds of samples of everything to anyone. So people love coming by the booth. We're always coming out with new things. So we have flavored wooden tips now, which are really exciting. So a lot of products are flavored, but it's really just sprayed with a scent. And I think even if you licked it, you really wouldn't taste it that much, but it does have like a really nice smell. But our wooden tips are actually flavored on the tip. So you could smell it, but when you put it on your lips and you smoke it and then you pull it away, if you start licking your lips, you're actually tasting the flavor. So it doesn't interfere with your flower. You're still going to get like the taste of the terpenes as you smoke, but then on your lips, you'll start tasting. We have two flavors right now, sugar and vanilla, and then we're coming out with other fruit flavors. So people are always excited to get all of these new items when we go to trade shows. So those will be some of the new ones. These little mini cigarillo blunt tubes are new. So I know people will be excited to try those. And then we have new ceramic tip options, small size, which is new. We only had like a big 1 gram size. And for most people, 1 gram is too much. So like these little half-gram ceramic tip cones smoke really nice.
As a startup, how much time and preparation do you put into preparing for the show?
A lot. I set a bi-weekly meeting, so like once every 2 weeks for MJ BizCon planning, and we started that like I think last month, so maybe in June. So we're meeting twice a month from June to November to make sure that we're prepared. And it's myself and 2 other people that go to that meeting every time. And there's multiple people from our warehouse team supporting the picking and the packing and the palletization of everything. Our designers making sure that we have all the designs we need for catalogs, business cards, t-shirts, the cones that are all custom branded. And then our vendor management team is having to make sure that we order all those items. So it's a huge team effort, and we're putting months into it, and tens of thousands of dollars for MJ BizCon is the most expensive one.
Do you go to any other trade shows?
Oh yeah, I mean we go to all of them.
Okay.
So we're huge supporters of CannaCon. We go to almost all of them. We love Hall of Flowers too, so we usually go to every Hall of Flowers. Um, we started going to Flower Expo, which is pretty much like a clone of Hall of Flowers, just in other places besides California. NECANN is great. So we go to NECANN in Massachusetts, in Boston, where it started, but now they're expanding to other places in the Northeast. So we'll be going to the New Jersey one, and the Michigan is one as well. CWCB is our favorite show in New York. So we always go to the CWCB show in New York City. We've been going to Benzinga. So different type of audience, more C-suite finance focused, a lot more MSOs there. But if it's in a unique state, you'll get the small businesses that are excited about getting started there. So we were in the Florida one last year. This year it's going to be in Illinois. So we'll do Benzinga. There's smaller shows up here in Washington. So it's our local market. So we're definitely going to those. And now that we have the consumer products day savers, it opens up our world to a lot more shows that aren't industry focused, but more consumer focused. So we're starting to look into different like music festivals or open air consumption events. We're going to be at the Emerald Cup this year, which we're really excited about. I've never been to that before. So yeah, we love trade shows. We're really picky about which ones we go to, but we do go to like almost all of them.
We're super picky, but we do go to all of them.
Well, we go to, yeah, I guess we don't go to all of them because there's a lot of bad ones. So you definitely need to be careful either as an attendee or exhibitor. There's some that aren't that good, but all the ones I listed are great. So if you need a free tip, there you go.
Yeah, every once in a while you find yourself at one that's a miss. But for those, I find like those are like year one regional trade shows.
Yeah, we'll never go to a show in its first year. You
Okay.
just never know how it's going to be. So sometimes we'll go to it and walk around, or usually we know enough people that we'll ask them how it was. And
Okay.
then we'll go the second year.
You mentioned supporting groups like the ACLU and Weed for Warriors. Do you do anything locally in terms of community outreach?
Not yet. Um, we want to start getting more involved locally. We're thinking about starting to throw like some parties for local producer processors and bud tenders. Then we're also working on different like regional branded items for day savers. So like we're coming out with like a Texas themed pack, a New York themed pack, Florida and California. Those are going to be the first ones. And those we're looking to potentially partner with like a local charity as well, similar to the Cones for a Cause initiative that we have. But we haven't done too much here in Washington yet.
Are bud tenders the most underappreciated role in the cannabis industry?
I don't know if underappreciated. I mean, they're underappreciated in the sense that the dispensary owners oftentimes don't treat them or pay them enough. But if you ask a brand like a producer processor, they definitely value bud tenders. They know that the bud tenders are the gatekeepers. They're spending a lot of money interfacing with them, talking with them, educating them, giving them free samples, giving them free swag. So I'd say as like a brand owner or producer processor or a farm owner, you definitely understand and appreciate the value of the bud tender. But as a dispensary owner, oftentimes you hear that they don't really care about their employees. They're not paying them enough. There's a lot of turnover. So it kind of depends what side you're on, I'd say.
Okay. Well, Harrison, I really do appreciate you taking the time to give us an update as to what's going on with Custom Cones USA and Day Savers. You know, before we get out of here, is there anything else that we might have left out or anything in particular you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself or your companies?
So we're still accepting applications if you want to donate some of your smoking experience for science. You can still sign up on daysavers.com. There's a homepage banner for the Science of Smokability. So just click on that. There's a super short form. We're picking 200 people and paying you $4.20 to smoke. We're accepting people to sign up through the end of this month, July, and then we'll be randomly selecting people, going through that process of sending out those pre-rolls. So there's definitely still time to do that. And then definitely if you're near an Urban Outfitters, check it out. Pick up the 10-pack of artisan tubes in the perfect pack. If you're not good at rolling, it makes your life way easier. Even if you are good at rolling, it takes, what could have taken you a few minutes, 5 minutes, you now could roll a joint in 30 seconds, especially if you're preparing for a party, entertaining a lot of people, or about to go to a concert. You could crank out 5 joints in a minute now, or a couple minutes. And then with Day Savers and Custom Cones USA, we're always coming out with new items. So subscribe to the newsletter on both sites, depending on if you're a consumer or more of a producer processor. And yeah, just stay tuned for the new items that we have. And then we're always sending out samples. If you're a qualified business, if you need anything, just reach out to us. Our sales team will understand your business, your needs, and then we can send you samples of all of our latest paper products, blunts, packaging, and then give you demos and educate you on all the machines as well.
I guess we focused a lot on the Day Saver side of the business. You know, on Custom Cones USA side, the producer for the producer processor, I remember that you do a lot of due diligence before you bring manufacturers in house and offer their products on your site. Have there been any new products lately that you were particularly impressed with that might really help out those producers or processors?
It's kind of niche, but we have a Canagar machine that we've been vetting and have customers that really love it now and are successfully using it. So it is a small part of the industry, but if you're looking to differentiate or potentially play in a less competitive segment, we do have an automated Canagar machine, and there's 3 different ones. There's one that does 1 at a time, 3 at a time, and 6 at a time. So that's really cool. And then this homogenizing machine. So it could homogenize any 2 materials. So it doesn't only have to be used for infused pre-roll production, where you're infusing any type of concentrate onto ground flower, but you could also use it to purge concentrates. So you could add a vacuum attachment to it, and then the shear force plus the vacuum sucks out all of the different solvents. And so you could purge your concentrates way faster and with way less heat exposure versus people are putting it in vacuum ovens for hours and hours and hours. And then you could also use it for edible manufacturing. So for mixing raw materials together and ingredients, it perfectly blends and homogenizes batches of, let's say, like gummies, supplies, or any type of candy. You're able to perfectly blend that material together and really fast. And homogenization is important to make sure that everything's consistent. Otherwise, you might have like hot spots in your chocolate bar where it's really potent there and less potent in another area. So for a company that is producing a variety of products, this machine's great. It can help with your edibles, your infused flower, and purging concentrates.
What is a Canagar machine?
So a Canagar in general is a really tightly compacted rod of cannabis. So there's zero airflow through the flower material, whereas in a pre-roll, it's not packed that tight. So the air is going through all the different particles. But in a Cannagar, it's packed rock solid and there's a hole down the center, and that's where the airflow is going through. And these type of products will burn for hours, depending on how big they are. So it's kind of like a cigar, but it's not in the sense of a cigar is like a joint. It burns through the airflow where the tobacco is. So it's like kind of like a cannabis cigar, but not really.
Okay. Well, thank you again for the insight, Harrison, and I really hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, David.
All right, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right, for Harrison Bard, co-founder and CEO of Custom Cones USA and Day Savers, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.